It's a privilege of God again for us to be with you all across our dear land, across the Caribbean and further field. I want to let you know that life is a precious gift of God. And as we venture on this journey that God has given us, we must do all in our power, in our will to safeguard what God has given to us. There are so many people who are struggling and paying endless money to be alive. And some of us who are young, we are so reckless and we just don't care what we do. But today we want to know that God cares for you, and you must show appreciation for that gift that God has given to you. So we welcome you today. We ask that you stay tuned and you invite someone. God bless you.
We have a responsibility as a people to learn, but not only to learn, but to apply what we have learned in life. And when we would have adopted this posture, this approach will contribute to order and to progress in our society. If we take the statistics annually with respect to the number of persons who would have been killed on the road, the number of persons who would have lost a limb or some body part, the number of repairs that had to be done to houses. Imagine that, to a house. With respect to accidents, vehicles running off the road and hitting an entire house. The number of repairs or the cost of repairs to be done to vehicles, and to bridges and all over. We have lost an unmeasurable amount of money as a result of carelessness and recklessness, and we have to bring an end to this kind of thing, because we always say, we need everyone in this country to make a contribution to its development. We are already underpopulated, for the size of our country, and we are bordering somewhere around 750,000 people, 83,000 square miles, and yet this is not as a result of war or result of some kind of devastation. This is as a result of an act of man. We are depleting and interfering with our population. So we need to be a people of discipline again, and to value life, because life, as we said earlier, life is precious and it is worth living. Many of us, when we would have written, those of us who drive, for example, we did not, I'm not talking about those who might receive the book by a token of appreciation, but those of us who drive, we are taught in the course that we do, in the theory, we taught about the 5 C's, which is care, courtesy, common sense, caution, and consideration. We have learned these things, some of us, and we have not been applying these things that we've learned. And what we have become is a contributory factor to the mayhem, and this has got to stop. And today we want to examine this whole notion of life and to posture, to put some ideas as to how we could actually alleviate this kind of madness that we're seeing in our society with regard to the use of the roads. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Rev. Last week when we looked at it, we spoke to the issue that we all have a voice, and it was important that we all speak to the issue. Because if you see madness and you don't say anything, you eventually become consumed by the madness. And it took just a couple of days to recognize, to become a part of the madness on the road. We also spoke to the issue of duty. It is a duty to attempt to correct this issue. And we have a responsibility not to allow it to go. And hence, we are engaging you in this particular matter. But I don't think that we have recognized how sacred life is and how important it is to preserve life. I don't know if we have come to a place where we have been so beaten up, so downtrodden, advantage might have been taken on us that we don't seem to be a people who value life. Could you imagine? You are a driver of public transport with a minibus licensed to carry people, public servants or people of the public from point A to point B, and you will drive carelessly as if you're a child playing with a toy? Could you imagine? There's no sense of life and limb, you as a driver, much more the people that you were placed in your hands to take care of. And it worries me if somewhere along the line in our training, in our developmental process, in the sharing of knowledge, in the improving of our communities and societies, if we have devalued life, in our hostility over who should win and who shouldn't win, we have come to a place where we reduce the value of life. But somewhere along the line, we don't seem as a people to recognize that life carries a significant value.
I concur, but what I am worried about is the youths, the young children on the roads. I am totally worried about especially the minibuses transporting our young children to and from school. I believe there ought to be some form of penalty and some kind of ban. Maybe the legislature should look at this to suspend or prohibit some minibuses from carrying children. I understand one teacher took it on himself to order his children not to go into certain buses. Listen, I saw an overcrowded bus. In my mind, it had about 40 children inside. And coming at the junction, it stopped at the traffic light. Thank you. And at the traffic light, the pulsating music, and the driver, he's mashing on the brakes. So everybody, and I'm saying, what is this? We have to do something better to transport our children. I want to make a public appeal to Mr. President. Mr. President, please intervene. Let there be a policy for transporting our children. I know you have personally making effort. You are personally making effort to transport children to the something they call the Bs, the buses and the bikes and so on. But in our city, they need urgent intervention into how our children are being transported to school.
Those 40 children were in a 40-seater bus?
No, the same small minibus, 15-seater.
You're so correct there. In fact, the children, not only overcrowding those buses, but like you mentioned, the sort of music that's being played in those buses. Apart from that also, I think a pedestrian crossing means, to allow pedestrians to cross. And if somebody stands at the edge of it, there's an indication that he or she wishes to cross. But oftentimes, those buses or even high cars and private transport, they just speed through, having no regard that those children are standing there waiting. The law has provided a safety mechanism for them to cross from one side of the road to the other side. And we should observe it. Those children stand there, stop, and allow them to go across the road.
In your plea, in Pastor Homenstein plea, I see the need for networking, because we can't leave it up to the police alone to do the work of ensuring that the roads are safe. I remember when we recall as a child, you're walking the streets with your parents and they're teaching you look left, look right, look left again before you cross. I don't see some things like that happening. What I see happening is some parents just having the children walk anyhow. Mm-hmm. We talk about the need for people to be cautious as they use the roadway. It's not just those that are driving or riding, but even the pedestrians. Mm-hmm. We need to take into consideration the need of each person. I think we're too busy. We want to get from point A to point B in a short time. and we're not taking into consideration those that are using the roads also.
Why
Before you go past this, another thing of concern to me is night driving, which is so critical. I don't believe that drivers need to use their high beam throughout the journey, because it puts the oncoming driver at a disadvantage. You can, if you have your like high beam on and I'm coming, I don't get to see, my vision is impaired, I don't get to see properly. And so I am placed in a position where I can cause an accident because of the wanton use of the high beam. The other thing is those pedestrians who are walking at night and those cyclists, you need to use bright colors so that persons who are driving can see.
But I like you describe what is happening in the environment beautifully. But I want to push us a little further. Is it something wrong in the way we are thinking? Is it a case where we really don't value ourselves? Because what you're describing, there sounds like, in some cases, utter carelessness, utter disregard, not just for others, but even for your own self. Do we have a need to develop in our community, maybe back in the schools, in our home, the value for life and how you should work to preserve and protect life?
Pastor, I think you've hit on a very important point there. I think that we don't take enough consideration for our own lives, and we perhaps are too trusting of others. An example I give you, I used to ride a cycle as a youngster going to school, but if I am about to overtake a car, I always looked behind me first. If this car was parked in the corner, I would look behind me before I moved out. What I see nowadays is it seems to be a normal thing. If there's an obstacle in my path, I just move out as a cyclist. They just move out, and just sometimes they're in the path of another car, but they're putting their lives in the hands of the guy behind it. Hopefully he would see me. No, I'm saying your life is valuable. I mean, one of the things they teach you in driving is defensive driving. We should also practice defensive riding, defensive walking. We have to take care of our own lives. Don't put our lives in other people's hands.
We have to take care of ourselves, indeed. And one of the things I think we need to do, because we really need to look at how we resolve these matters. I think we need to stop at every corner again. Sometimes, we, especially the cyclists, motorcyclists, and the persons who ride the bicycles, you see, people don't want to stop at the corners. And again, we really need to value our own lives. I think, as Deacon Wesley spoke about networking, we really have to be on a campaign again to really put into practice the 5 C's. And we can't leave it on just a few persons who are going to apply for their license, but let us apply it in our homes, in our schools. Let it become a part of our lives, because these matters wouldn't go away. They are with us every single day. So we have to take steps to ensure that we resolve these matters and ensure that we value our life and our live again.
We have to value our own lives first. If we don't value our lives, we would not value nobody else's life. Life is a gift from God. It is sacred. It is precious. It is valuable, and it is priceless. And we need to treat it with all respect. We want to plead with all road users, whether if you're driving, whether if you're riding, whether if you're walking, to use the 5 C's at all times. And I would just remind you again of the 5 C's. They are care, courtesies, consideration, caution, and common sense. And so we plead from the set of choices, we plead with you. Let's protect our lives and protect the lives of others.
A few days ago, just after our last airing of choices, I was going to an event, and On my way to the event, when I was just about to park, parking was available to me on the opposite side of the road. So I was just about to take the turn to park. And I stopped and observed what was happening behind me. In front of me was clear because the traffic light had stopped the vehicles that were in front of me. And I saw, though a distance behind me, a vehicle that looked like a minibus proceeding towards me at a very rapid pace. I was concerned because not far away is a traffic light. And so at the speed that the bus was coming, I'm wondering if this driver really had a concept of the environment in which he was in. He or she, whoever was the driver. So I stopped, turned the wheel to turn, but couldn't turn because I'm not sure what is going to happen. And that driver proceeded. There were vehicles parked on both sides of the road. So whatever he's going to do, the safest thing would be to stop. Or he will have to be a real movie star to navigate between the stuff. So I stopped for a lawyer. And by the grace of God, he hit the wheel of the vehicle that was set to turn, hit the rim, brushed the vehicle, and then finally stopped. And I recognized it's a minibus. I recognized the youthfulness of the driver. I even started to ask myself, how a driver like that was licensed? Is there not a condition attached to years of experience to be able to drive public vehicles? But the part that startled me was when he said, I didn't see this vehicle. I didn't recognize this vehicle. So I'm saying, where were you? And you are a driver of other people. It tells me that something is wrong, desperately wrong. And there wasn't any care extended, not only for his own life, but for the life of the people in public transport. And I thought it was downright ignorance. I couldn't help but calling it stupid. I couldn't believe that you could think that way. And I want to encourage us with the Proverbs 9:9. It says, give instructions to a wise man, and he will be wiser still. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. And that is what we're trying to do here on this program. We all could increase in our learning.
Never mind the elaborate, never mind the elaborate system of laws that we have. And I've come to recognize that we have laws actually for everything. Everything that we see that might be out of place, we have laws to really put them in place. Or perhaps what we need is an elaborate system of enforcing our laws. I mean, we're always talking about how we're going to enforce the laws, but that is very, very critical as we move forward. The point where people who are entrusted with the responsibility for ensuring that enforcement happens, right at that juncture, we can't have people who will water down the system and throw away justice just like that, or else we're back to square one. So even as we deal with this whole thing, it's a holistic approach we got to take. We have to find a way to empower those who enforce, empower them morally, empower them with they would have had the instruments already to do so, but moral empowerment is very, very critical as well. And what I want to posit too at this time is that the highest form of government is self-government. I refuse to allow an external source or structure to bring order to my life. I prefer, as a human being, to be regulated from within rather than from without. And I believe that's a concept that we need to carry through even as we continue to think about
what's happening in our land.
And you know that comes with the whole thing of, Pastor Sandra made mention of teaching and information sharing, and therefore I want to take this opportunity just to identify some things to our drivers that they could actually adopt. I think when one is driving, in particular, you need to keep your eyes on the road. Many times I've had people in my vehicle, and they would have been attempting to say, look this body and look that body. That's the worst thing you could ever do to me, because I wouldn't notice you, even though you're with me. You know, and this is anybody I'm talking about. I wouldn't notice you, I wouldn't hear you, because I'm not looking for anything at that point in time. Because I remember one time I was told to look, and before you know it, the mirror of the vehicle grazed a man's shoulder. I took my eyes off the road to look at what somebody was saying to me, and the mirror grazed the vehicle. And then the man came, I stopped, and the man came to me, and the man knocked the vehicle. He said, mister, these things don't really like we, you know. Before into the vehicle, but we need to keep our eyes on the road. Secondly, never use your cell phone. I know this is what we say, get a major call and so on. Cell phone is a distraction. Maybe a whole set of people are guilty about it, but that thing, sometimes try. Sometimes you might be in a line, you say you have enough time, and while you were texting or whatever, next thing you know, the line gone and you alone in the road and people at the back. So I mean, these are things. Don't change. People like to change music. I know these minibus men. You're changing your CDs and your DVDs and so on. All of these things you want to do at the same time. And then we spoke about this one, never drink and drive. You can't be drinking and driving, because you lose control, you kill people. And then, what about the speed limits? You know, I remember as a young man growing up, they had a family, I think the brothers are still around, some twin brothers. These men observed the speed limit and so on. Right, and they were very orderly. And you know what? When people saw this bus, midnight with them twin brothers, they can take a long time, they got plenty of rules and so on. But let me tell you something, those same rules will preserve your life. So speed limit is very important. When you see a vehicle exceeding the speed limit, as we mentioned, you have a voice, we can speak the speed limit. Then the road has rules. We have to follow the rules of the road. And the last thing I want to tell those drivers, you have to ignore aggressive drivers. Aggressive drivers, sometimes they draw you into a confrontation. Sometimes you're in front and this man decides that he's going to bore and pass you, and you want to worry with him. Next thing you know, the two of you, bam, an accident. So, yes, in a point. Let me tell you something. I have been involved in something like that. Don't worry. And it does not pay. One person told me, just now, Minister Wesley, one person said to me that in the city, for example, regardless of all the speeding that will take place to who going where, he says in the city, and I looked at this thing, he said the person who's trying to speed ahead of you, they will never reach more than maybe 30 seconds or a minute before you. So when that man pulls in shortly after you pull it, because the city does not allow for speeding and this long thing, so it's a level of ignorance. You go into the culture, say you speed and you hustling to speed with this man, he will not reach there in front of you more than a minute. And so we have to look at these things.
Father Sana, you said something as you presented that scenario that we cannot afford to take lightly. I did not see that vehicle. I strongly believe something should be done as it relates to testing of eyes in relation to driving. I recall a young lady said, I did not know my dad was going blind because he was driving for years. And one time they were driving and suddenly he drove out in the traffic. He's crossing the road, and she said then it dawned on me after 2 occasions that my dad was not seeing. So sometimes we take these things for granted. You know, something should be done as it relates. We give people, we take them in classroom, we give them a written test, but as it relates to seeing.
But you yourself too, man, I mean, if you can't see, I mean, how you gonna drive?
People still
you know?
No, you see, the thing is, right, and he's right, maybe part of the process now needs to entail some kind of screening. It has to move beyond just a theoretical, because people could see they have different levels of vision and so on, and therefore there should be maybe an acceptable vision level before persons might be given a book. And we have these issues with people who have issues with limbs and so on, and they're still, could you imagine that? You probably got one hand or one leg and you're still speeding, you're not even taking your time. So, all of these things we need to consider maybe before we actually hand someone a book.
Earlier I made a call or expressed concern about our children. I want to flip my coin of concern for the elders, the elderly on the road. We have 19 World War II veterans on the road. I learned that recently when I went to celebrate with one who became 95. Now, let us be courteous. Plenty of them, plenty of our senior citizens, they do not have their own transportation. Let us be courteous to them. Let us help them to get to and from their destinations in the comfort and not scare them to death with the speed that you were traveling with.
One of the 5 C's is common sense. My brother sent me a talk the other morning. He says, common sense is like a flower, but it doesn't grow in everybody's garden. And I saw a slogan on the road somewhere in Homestretch Avenue is that speed will get you there dead on time. So drivers, if you know you gotta get somewhere, leave a 5-10 minutes earlier and got respect for the others.
Thank you. All we are saying is that we cannot continue to have an environment where there is complete disregard for law and order. Laws are placed there to protect us, and we need to honor them. The scripture in Proverbs 18:15 says, "The heart of the prudent acquires knowledge," and it is really resisting ignorance. And if you're prudent, you claim to be wise, claim to be smart, you acquire knowledge. And the ear of the wise seeks knowledge. I pray that we will find a way where we will improve on our skill, improve on the way we operate on the road, improve on the way we treat each other. And even though you might be upset and mad, you might have been a part of the Hillary camp, so you're upset, or a part of the Trump camp, so you celebrate that you, in spite of the odds, you've made it. Remember this basic thing. Don't let your fear and your perception keep you from growing. Always grow, develop. I'm looking forward to see us behave better as we use our public roadways. And remember, this is choices. Your whole life is a sum of the choices. God bless you.
We thank you for joining us this evening. We want to remind you to join us for our special services at First Assembly. I'm Celicia on behalf of the set, reminding you that your whole life is the sum of your choices. God bless you.